Well, it says, my name is Stewart. On the left hand side here is my beautiful wife Claire, and Claire would be the backbone of the ministry work that we do as a team together. I'm a psychotherapist, and my son would always say, just take away the word therapist. And he's not joking. So all I have is nothing more than my life's experience up to the day. I'm the oldest of 6 boys, and I grew up in an alcoholic home. And the only thing I knew was drinking, rows, fighting, shouting and stuff. And it had an awful effect on me in my life growing up. And as a child, seeing and hearing things that children shouldn't hear. So the only way you go into a thing like that is a survival mode. And I drew within myself, and I became shy, and I could trust no one. And I wet the bed. I was 15, I was traumatized. And when both your parents are unavailable, because my father was dealing with my mother's full-blown addiction, and there's 6 boys. So when your parents are unavailable, you go into survival mode and try to do the best that you can. So within the home, my mother was an amazing woman. And I've come to learn through all her drinking and all her behaviour and everything that she did and failed to do, she was an amazing woman to raise 6 boys under, and her being dealing with full addiction as well. She gave us everything she had. A lot of people say it wasn't a lot she gave. But you got to understand, that's all she had. She gave us all the tools she had, that's all she had. And she gave us everything. She's an amazing woman. And listen, it didn't start off like that, and I didn't start off talking about my mother like that. Because that kind of upbringing brings a lot of hurt, resentment, and anger, frustration and stuff. So with seeing the drink within the home and my mother being rushed to hospital when I was a child, taking overdoses and stuff. Well, when you're a child, watching your father crying, knowing if your mother's going to die or things, no one told me what was happening. I don't know what an overdose was, and this is the kind of things. Then I'm up all night and then had to get up and go to school the next day. So there is just no boundaries in addiction. It just goes to the core of the cores of everything. So it was a journey, and it was one of the promises that one of the promises I made growing up, that I actually would never, ever drink alcohol. That's something I was really sure of. So 14 years of age, I had the experience where I had tasted alcohol for the first time. And let me make this very, very clear. I did not like the taste of alcohol whatsoever, but I loved the effect. And alcoholics don't drink for taste, they drink for effect. So again, what I was doing was killing the pain that I was trying to live with inside. And all that pain and anger came out because we were bullied when we were young, and they used to spit on us in the bus, me and the brothers and stuff. And when we found alcohol, all them things changed. There was no more bullying, and you'd stand up for yourself and even get the courage to ask to get her out. The answer was always no, but you could always ask, you know what I mean? And these simple gestures like asking to get her out and saying no, when you're super sensitive and easy hurt, the rejection of that to somebody like me is huge. You go away and think there's something wrong with you. You know, what's wrong? So again, went through life like that. I got married. I thought I found the solution. I got married to an amazing girl, and I got married when I was 19. I thought, problem solved. Got married, moved away from Derry and away into Donegal, and became a fisherman and learned the ways of the waters and stuff. Years later, I bought a boat and men working for me. The problem was, the more money I made, the more I drank. And where I lived, there was a bar called the Fisherman's Inn, and they had a license where they only had to close 1 hour a day. So you can imagine that was paradise to somebody like me. So my drinking got out of control really bad, and you okay? And what a thing I couldn't do back then, I hadn't any ability, was to take responsibility for my drinking, the people that was hurting. And let's cut out hurting. I destroyed my wife and children. No, I didn't hurt them, I destroyed my wife and children. See, there's no boundaries to addiction. No boundaries. There's not a hurt them a wee bit nonsense. I destroyed their lives. Everything good in their life, my illness took it away from them. I robbed them of their childhood. I robbed my wife of everything good in her life. And I found myself in a bad way at 21 years of age. I was in a treatment centre. And when I was in a treatment centre, I only went to the treatment centre because it caused that much mess. I says, that's it, I'm going to manipulate my way out of this. I'm going to a treatment centre. The counsellor, like myself now, because that's my job as well, is he knew I had no intentions. But here's what happened. He says to me, Liam, you're not allowed to speak. And I says, listen, that's fine. And he says, I'm going to ask your wife a few questions. And I asked my wife what was I like to live with. And I promise you, she was talking about this monster. I couldn't believe what she was really saying. And the denial that I was in, the first thing I was saying into my head, I was saying, would I get you out of the car? That was the first thing I was saying. I couldn't genuinely believe the things she was saying about me. And you know why? Because they were all the truth. They're all the truth. See, the biggest thing that I teach about addiction is denial. D-E-N-I-A-L. Didn't even know I am lying. Denial to the depths. And funny, in life, I teach the 12 steps, and as I'm a person-centered therapist and a wee bit of CBT therapist and psychodynamic therapist, and they're all in the 12 steps. And why do I teach the 12 steps? And why is the 12 steps the most successful treatment in the world today above any professional unit? It's a real good question to ask, because God is in the program. So that was another obstacle for me, because I didn't believe in God. And when I used to go to Alcoholics Anonymous at the start, all the old timers were saying, your loving Father in heaven. And I thought, really? Where was he in my childhood? Don't be trying to sell me that nonsense. I came here to stop drinking. And but you see, the good thing that the old timer told me, I verbally says it out in a meeting. I didn't say it in my head. I told them how I was feeling. And that's the thing why I used to drink so much, because I could never talk about how I felt. And we were brought up that big men don't cry. And anything that happens in the home stays in the home. And we stayed really, really sick. My mother's drinking got worse and worse and worse. My father was a good wee holy man. He didn't drink and he didn't smoke. His two younger brothers were twins. One was a monk and the other was a priest. And they were good living. And then me and my 5 brothers came along, and they no longer had a good name after a few years. We were well known through the papers or whatever kind of trouble we're getting ourselves into. So I couldn't accept it. I didn't start shaving until I was 23, and he's trying to tell me at 21 I was an alcoholic. And my perception of an alcoholic's a boy lying down the street, the black coat, the cord, the bottle in the pocket. It certainly wasn't me. But the depths of denial, it was awful. But I ended up in a mental institution as well, because not only could I not stop drinking, I'd come to learn it wasn't a drinking problem I had. And drink was only but a symptom. I had a living problem. So when I'm teaching people that drinking drugs is a symptom, I'm put over here, I'm not really interested in much you drink or drug. I'm interested in what kind of relationship have you got with yourself. with your family and stuff. The biggest ruination of everybody in addiction is loud and clear, is resentment. And you'll really understand what resentment is. Resentment is a lack of forgiveness. And you cannot grow spiritually. It says in the big book, we block out the sunlight of the Spirit and we cannot grow. And then we say to people then we're sober. No, we're a dry drunk. And what is sobriety? I know a lot of people say, I've stopped drinking. That is not sobriety. It says sobriety is constant thought of others and how we meet their needs. Why? It says when we stop drinking, we're selfish, self-centered to the extreme. I heard a woman put it beautifully in Belfast 28 years ago. And not a lot of people in the meeting got what she says, but I got it right away. And she says, I'm not much, but I'm all I think about. And I thought, that's me. That's me, 24/7. And that is what has to die. You always hear, lift your cross and follow me. No, deny yourself, lift your cross and follow me. Deny oneself. So all these fancy words, die to self. Nobody's telling me how to die to self. You need to get rid of your resentment. How? I need to be taught. I need to be taught. I need to learn how to forgive. And you know who at the top of that, I resented the most in life? Me. I didn't need anybody to tell me I was no good. I already knew I was no good. I already knew the shame that I brought to my family, my mother and father, and my wife, my children and stuff. Who's responsible for all that? I am. I'm going to stand up here and blame my childhood and my mother and father. Absolutely not. You're never going to hear it. I did the drinking, I did the drugging, and I did the behaviour. So I was locked up in a mental institution for 11 weeks. And when you're like me and coming out of that, I didn't think somebody like me had pride. But I'm going to tell you a story, and it's absolutely true what happened. So I'm in this mental institution, and he says, Liam, part of your recovery is you have to go swimming on a Tuesday. And I thought, I'm not going swimming with them. See right away, I think I shouldn't be in there. These mental patients are going swimming, and I'm certainly not going with them for a fact. So he says, Liam, it's part of the therapy, you have to go. And I thought, how am I going to get out of this? So I waited behind till everybody got on the bus. And then when I got on the bus driver says, how you doing, Liam? He lived in my housing estate. So right away, that was that crack. With the yellow bus, we were going on the yellow bus to the swimming pool. And my pride was when we pulled up the roundabout, I was doing this long in case cars would see me. that they'd see me in a bus. But anyway. And listen, I'm not talking about people in mental institutions, I'm talking about me and how I seen it at that time. When we got to the swimming pool, I was about 10, I was looking for stuff down the back of the bus, and whether I could see them way ahead. And then I came in last. And the boy at work there, he said to me, did you get them all in? He thought I was in charge. And I says I did, I got them all in. And I had changed, I was in the swimming pool, I felt really bad, and I called him over and I says, bro, look, I'm one of them. That's a true story. But again, I had went back out, the denial and pain so much, I went back out drinking and drugging. If most alcoholics that I've come into all over the years are bad listeners. And one thing that alcoholics don't like to hear is the word no. And they don't like to be challenged about change either. No change. And they learn you a beautiful thing in the steps, a real beautiful thing. Most disturbance in people's lives can come from everywhere, but most effectively is from families. Families are the people who can trigger us the most. Steal our peace, fill us with resentment, and we can justify that resentment. Not in the 12 steps. No, it's not in the 12 steps. So then how do I learn to forgive? And where do I start? Number one, Is addiction an illness? Yes. People say it's a disease. And the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't mention the disease. It says it's an illness. In chapter 2, start of the page, it says an illness of the sort, and we come to believe in an illness. I'll tell you why I'm getting that out there. In Narcotics Anonymous, they use the word disease. So if I'm sitting beside somebody and I say I have a disease, right away they're thinking I can spread something to them right away. So it's an illness I have. So let's talk about what the first step really means. Because if you don't understand the first step of the 12 steps, you can forget about the rest 11. It says we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol, and I put in drugs as well, because they're both alcohol. I admitted I'm powerless over alcohol and drugs, and my life had become unmanageable by me. What does it mean? I just reflect on my life, on my drinking, and my drugging, and my behaviour. And the people I claimed they loved was the people that I hurt the most. And when I sit in the bar and tell people how much I love my children and stuff, nonsense, lies, all deceit. So I thought I was too young again, back in the mental institution for another 7 weeks. Out of there and back into a treatment centre. And I met this beautiful counsellor woman, and I started to tell her about my childhood, which I can't go into here because it's too deep. We share in a general way what it was like and what happened and what we're like now. But this counsellor started to cry. And I thought, for once I met somebody who really cares. Like, really cares about me. And I was blown away that this woman was really genuinely looking out for me. So I tried my best with her, I did, and I put a lot of work in. And then as we talked again, my family were still drinking, going nuts. I'm the oldest of 6 boys, all drinkers and druggers, and just bad. And I couldn't stay away from my family. I tried to help them when I wasn't even fit enough to help myself. And I relapsed once again, no big surprise. The last time I was in mental hospital, I was only in for 2 weeks. See, the things I heard from I was 21, now I'm 28, were starting to sink in a wee bit. And I left the mental institution there after 2 weeks, and I went to a treatment centre. And she says one important question. She says, Liam, do you want to stop? See, I'm full of lies and deceit, but that was the first time I told her I wanted to stop. And it was the first time I ever had the emotion of crying. So big men don't cry. I was either going to cry or I was going to go back out drinking and drugging again, and I broke down crying. And that was the start of my recovery. That was the start. And it was tough. And I always teach people, if you're sitting beside somebody and they say it's easy, stay away from them. It's not easy. It's never meant to be easy. But is it fruitful? Absolutely. The 12 promises after the first 9 steps is just amazing. See, a life beyond your wildest dreams. What does that mean? It means I can go through everything in life and never turn to drink or drugs again. And I have proof of that in my testimony. I was only 4 weeks sober and clean, and my mother and father broke up on Christmas Day. The house was nearly burned down. There was violence in the home. Awful. Where was I? Sitting in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous with my friends. Sitting together, hanging in together on Christmas Day. That's where I was. And my brothers came looking for me and they couldn't find me. And I'm really glad, because there had been a lot of violence and that was never meant to be there and stuff. And I thought, my mother and father, after 30 years, she packed up and she left on Christmas Day. And I was so broken. You've no idea. Being the oldest of the family, I felt somewhat responsible keeping my mother and father together all them years. My father left one time and went to England, and me and a brother went and found him in England, took him home again, thinking we were doing the right thing. And I'm only 10 weeks sober now, and the next brother to me saying, Liam, Alcoholics Anonymous is a brilliant place. I'm just not ready. But I'll be back and I'm ready. And 2 weeks later he was dead. 28 years of age, married, 4 young children, youngest only 6 weeks old. And he asked me to stand for the youngest child because I was sober. How did I cope with that? 2 years I cried for, I'm not ashamed to say, I cried for 2 years. And here's where I didn't believe in God, but here's what happened. A black and white film came on the TV, and it was the song of Bernadette. And I was blown away. I really was touched. So I went to my brother's grave every day and I took a rose off his grave. I walked around the back of the grotto of the chapel and put it in St. Bernadette's hand and asked her, would she pray to me, pray for Our Lady that I would believe, that I would come to believe in her Blessed Mother, as she did. And I kept doing that and doing that. And then I took a rose from his grave and I put it at her Blessed Mother's feet. And I said, Blessed Mother, would you please help me to believe in your Son? Please. And that's how it happened for me. That's the way it happened. And then my brothers are still drinking and drugging and going mad. And our brother, he's just a tortured soul. Since he was young, he got a gallon of petrol poured over himself and set himself on fire. He jumped into a river foil 3 times. He cut his throat, he cut his arms, legs, and just a tortured soul. So when it says at the start of there is no boundaries to addiction. There is no in between. It's a gutter. It takes every human emotion out of a living human being, and we weren't created for that. I found him dead in bed also at 35 years of age. And it was sad. And you know what, because I was so into prayer, you know the first thing I done was conditioned to get on my knees. And he had been dead for a while. And I opened up his fingers, and I put my hand in his hand, and I knelt down and says the serenity prayer. Even before I cried. That's what I done. And it was a year later before the penny kind of dropped for me. Because I was living a real, the best life possible. I know how God in my life understood step 1 was saying, a life run by me is totally nuts. You imagine me in charge of something with my head and making decisions? You can imagine. So step 2 says, came to believe in a power could restore you to sanity. Restore to sanity means if I drink a drug again, you have to be mad. Step 1 and 2 is a reflection. They lift a drink or drug, yet there's something wrong with me. For definite. Understood it. Step 3 is the key. First part of the action of the program. Made a decision to hand my will and my life over the care of God as I understood Him. What does it mean? What am I handing over? I'm handing over this sick mind. See, the doctor's opinion in New York in 1934 dealt in addiction. He was a top consultant. And he got friendly with a lot of alcoholics and drug addicts and never get any of them sober. And he put this on paper. And he wrote in the doctor's opinion, these men and women were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. Step 1 says these men and women have warped their minds in such an obsession for destructive drinking. Listen to the next line from a medical doctor, that only an act of providence can remove. It's only an act of God can help these people. Only an act of God. Only an act of God. So I made that decision and I handed my will and my life over to the care of God. And then my sponsor says, now you've got God in your life, Liam, you'll be able to go on step 4 and have an honest look at your life and write it down on paper. Because you wouldn't have the ability to have the honesty that God asks of you on your own. You need God's guidance and direction. And that's what I did. And I was just full of shame, the stuff I was writing down. See, here's the thing, people usually write down the things they did, and that's bad enough, but they forget to write down the things they failed to do. I failed to be a good husband, a good father, a good son, because addiction robbed me and my family of all that. The good thing is that it stopped My brother, who was going nuts, and I was telling him, "You're hurting Daddy and you're hurting Mommy, why do you want to stop?" And this was the biggest probably learning curve of, I'll be 30 years clean and sober of drinking drugs in a month's time through God's grace. And you ever hear people saying through the grace of God? What does it mean? What does the grace of God mean? What does it actually mean? It means a non-deserved favour from God. I certainly don't deserve it, but He believes I do. And acceptance is a real difficult thing. I'm a bad acceptor of things in life, and accepting things in life's terms. I find relationships extremely difficult. I find life extremely difficult. Truth. And the people I meet, everybody I meet seems to be fine. How are you? Fine. F-I-N-E. Frightened, insecure, neurotic and emotional. If you're telling the truth. But, so I'm not buying the fine kind of thing. Our Lord didn't go through what He went through for us to walk around fine. It's not. So, my mother says to me, when I get sober and clean, I used to take my father on holidays all the time. And my mother says, "Would you take me to Lanzarote?" And I said, "No, couldn't watch you anyway." And my brother said, "I think it's a good idea." I said, "Well, you come with me." So they wouldn't come. So I felt bad because I was taking my father away all the time, and I thought, Medjugorje is the place for my mother. So I phoned her and I said, "Mommy, you swore that if I took you to Lanzarote," he says, "you'd swear in the Bible you wouldn't drink." She says, I will. I said, "Forget about Lanzarote. Would you like to go to Medjugorje?" "I think that's a great idea, son." And I said, "Well, that's okay, I'll take you." First day out, I walked up Cross Mountain on my bare feet, for one brother died. I walked down again for the other brother who had a life of more sin on my bare feet. And I've news for you, I'll not be doing it again. Oh my God. But, so took it to Medjugorje, walked up the mountain with my bare feet and down, and see a wee single bed here and a wee single bed here, a wee locker, just me and my mother. See, I craved my whole life just to have a relationship with my mother. I see people out in town, a cup of tea and coffee, and having a wee chat. I never had that, and was envious of it. People took it for granted all the time. So when I went up and down the hill, and it was an early night, and my mother was sitting reading a book, and I thought, isn't this just lovely out in Medjugorje? Amazing. What a transformation. I heard this voice in the middle of the night. "Your father's a bee, and your father's a sea." And I thought, imagine having them dreams out here. And I opened the eye, and her hair was standing on her head. And she was down and robbed the fridge down the stairs of all their drink. So she got drunk for the full week. It was a nightmare, honestly. I says, "Mommy, there's people in there, and there's people up there, and there's people in there trying to get to sleep." And I don't give an F who's upstairs. Oh, you've no idea. So I got her down the field the next day, and I says, "You promised me." I says, "Mommy, you promised me you would never drink." Do you know what she says? "I promised you I wouldn't drink if I went to Lanzarote." Oh. Now listen, I could have drowned her in a pool of holy water. Not even a joke. So years had passed, her drinking continued, and a few years after that, she says to me, "I think her blessed mother wants me out again." I thought, "You have not a mission, Mommy, not a hope. It's not happening." And I prayed about it, and I phoned her back, and I says, "Okay, Mum, I'll take you, we'll go." And we had the best week. I had 1 week with my mother my whole life, and she never drank. She didn't ask for a drink. Her legs were all swollen. We used to sit at night and take the swelling out of her legs and stuff, and out for pizza and stuff, just me and my mother. It was amazing. I was so grateful for it. I took her up to the Oasis of Peace, and I says, "Mommy, see outside, you see, this is every language. Silence, 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 silence. She went, yeah, that's okay. And I said, Mom, right away they speak to me. I thought, I'm going to kill her. And she done it again. I thought, I'm definitely going to kill her. So I went outside and I said, Mommy, what do you not understand about you're not allowed to speak? My God, many times. She says, Liam, did you not see Jesus turned his head on the cross? And he looked down at me twice. And I knew to back off. And I said, Mom, I didn't see anything. But if you seen it, it was for you and not for me. And that was the best grace. I found her dead then, lying on the sofa at 65. She thought she was too old to get sober. God bless her. So, them situations are not easy. But you see, here's something I really, really know. And it's the truth. Our blessed mother had her arms wrapped around me all the time, unknowns to myself. And all the things that I think I was crying on my own and couldn't get it together, well, that's not the truth. I was well taken care of, well taken care of. And then my poor father got sick then, and he was diagnosed with dementia. And me and the brothers and our wives and stuff, we done brilliant. We proudly say we looked after our father for 5 years. We never left the home without our father was sleeping, and we were able to change him and do everything and give him his dignity. You know, so that's sobriety was about, to be able to give them things back. I ended up in I had a freak accident, and I found myself in intensive care, and I was given the last rites, and I was given 22 pints of blood, and my family was took into a room and was told I was going to die. And so 2 of my family got on at the time, they kissed me goodbye and stuff. And then another priest had on a counselling course with me a long, long time ago, not knowing the gift he had. He apparently the gift of the Holy Spirit, and I knew myself I was dying, and I asked for him. And he drove 100 miles, came down and he anointed me, and I stopped bleeding. After nothing else, I stopped bleeding and I lived. Surely you are all wondering in your head what happened. Yeah. But it's going to be hard to believe when I tell you. I was out the town on Wednesday afternoon and had a cup of tea and a scone. I choked on the scone and ended up in intensive care. Now here's what the medical people are saying. When I choked on the scone, they believe there was a bit of glass or hard plastic within it, and it cut my esophagus on the way down. So I'm eternally bleeding, walking around eternally bleeding, and knew nothing about it. So I was pronounced dead 3 times. And I had an out-of-body experience which was absolutely amazing. When I died, I met my younger brother. The first brother, 1 year younger than me. And we were in this, and it's a good thing for, our Lord gives us what we need. I've done a documentary out here many, many years ago, and I talked about when I died, and people were saying, what was it like? And I was saying I was in this luminous tunnel, not white, a luminous. And my brother was standing there, and he had his red suit on, and a red tabby bow, and a red flower. This luminous tunnel, going up slightly. And it was amazing to see him. And that's the suit that he was wearing when he was married. But suddenly I snapped my hand out of his hand, and he turned around and he just gazed at me. And I said, Daddy and Mommy, my children need me. And he smiled, and he turned, and he walked away. And I came in here and lived against all odds. And it was an amazing, amazing experience to have, because it set me up for finding the rest of my family dead. And knowing, see, there's believing in God and knowing that God is alive, and it's all done. There are many rooms in my father's mansion. If there was not, then I should have told you so. Already prepared. Already prepared. So for my younger brothers and mother who died an awful death in an addiction, our Lord, for me, what did he say on the cross? He says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They had no idea they suffered from addiction. No idea. None. So, in the faith now, it's that for me, it's the divine mercy and the rosary, and for my family, and trying to do the best I can. In COVID, I was living with my girlfriend, and I was up the stairs reading scripture. I was thinking, I'm dyslexic, and I found something in scripture, and I came running down the stairs, and I says, Claire, we can't live together. She says, who says? I said, Jesus says. She said, what are we going to do? And I'm saying, we'll do the right thing. We'll get annulment, and we'll get married and stuff. So my first wife wrote 2 letters on my behalf so I could get married, saying how changed I was. And then my wife's father has passed away. In prayer I asked my wife's father for her hand in marriage, and we got married. We tried to get married out here because this is my 33rd time out here, and it's just part of my life, and I love it so much. And so we couldn't, because there's too much paperwork. We got married in Derry, and then we got the wedding dress and suit. We came out here, and Father Leon took us out. We got our vows done. Where do we get our vows done? On the basis of peace, where my mother seen our Lord looking at her on the cross. So what blessings was in that? So there's another good friend of me and Father introduced me as Neil, and then he introduced me as a priest. So in between the two, he's talking about our friend Neil McDonough. And Neil McDonough's a great friend of ours, and he's a psychotherapist as well. Now, or may I say, he's a Catholic psychotherapist. I need to make sure that pronounce that properly. And we have great fun and everything else. But and again, in the 12 steps, what is the 12 steps? The core of it all. The core of the 12 steps is an introduction to Christ, and it's to develop a relationship once. And here's the thing: all the prayer meetings I go around, and I teach the 12 steps in one-day workshops, and I've never charged. And I worked as a psychotherapist for people in addiction for 6 years and never charged a penny either. I was working for the Lord and never got no funding or anything. And that's not an ego thing. I'm just talking about people who are dying in addiction. Who cares? Who cares that somebody buried their son or their daughter or the mother of all? Who? Jesus cares. Jesus cares. And giving us the ability to reach out to the human beings who are suffering. So there is no shame of being an alcoholic or a drug addict. The shame's doing nothing about it. And that's my experience. And the people, places and things the book teaches will not change. It teaches me, I change how I see people, places and things, and I be at peace. I be at peace. I have a PhD as well. I was with a couple the other day, and they paused for a wee minute till I told them what the PhD I was in, and I said, I have a PhD in huffing. And they laughed, and I have a P, the wife will tell you all about it. Do you know that, and this is the stuff that I teach, by the way. Do you know when my wife would walk in the room and say, what's wrong with you? And you go, nothing. Clear signal to say there's something wrong. Nothing. I disliked myself so much that I was hurting everybody that loved me, that I just self-harm. And I turned my emotional and pain into physical, and it was like a temporary relief to a permanent problem. So the day's journey is just about trying one's best. There is no perfection. And as I said, it's not a judgment, it's something to observe. Everywhere I go, everybody seems to be fine. Everybody. There are no couples arguing, and there's no couples getting their own way, and it just seems to be me and my wife. It's just us, because everybody else seems to be sweet. I don't know if you are doing it all right and we're doing it wrong, or we're telling the truth maybe. But again, that would be my experience of the day. You heard about Neil McDonough, and I was chatting to him earlier on, and we know each other years and stuff. And Neil's an amazing experiences in life too. Amazing fella, amazing man of God. And so we're putting our heads together, and we're writing a book. It's not going to be a book that everybody. It's going to be just a book about truth, struggles of life, and how to learn to forgive. It says, love your neighbour as yourself. Who can put their hand up and tell me you love yourself? Truly love yourself. And then I'm going to ask you, tell me 3 things you love about yourself, and see how many hands go back down. So it's about developing a relationship with oneself. And then that relationship is easy then when you meet other people. And has to be. What is a Christian? Many definitions. A Christian to be Christ-like. And when Christ walked here, where was he? With the broken, with the people who didn't want to be seen with. That's where our Lord was. And he's given me the grace, me and my wife, and the people that I run with, to go to the broken and sit down and be understanding. And the greatest love of all, what is the greatest love of all? To be able to feel and have compassion for another human being is the greatest love of all. Thank you very much. The last talk I done, somebody got on to me, says, Liam, you should have asked, does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any questions? And there is no such thing as a stupid question. People say it's a silly question. There is no.
You love yourself now?
I do.
Good man.
I do. Yeah, I do.
The 3 things?
I do. I believe I'm a child of God. I believe I'm capable of loving my family that put through hell and misery. And I love the broken hearted. A great love in my heart for them. But that's grace. So again, what is grace? Undeserved favour from God. Off myself, I am nothing. But I am not off myself, because I turn my will and my life over to God in step 3. I'm capable of doing anything with God within me.
God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you think everybody should do the 12-step program, not just people in addiction?
Bro, that's a question I get all the time. It's a good question, very good question. My answer to it is, this is not the only way of getting sober through the 12 steps. But what I do say in Alcoholics Anonymous, and people in here who know about it, it's the oldest and most successful way of getting sober and staying sober to this day above any professional unit in the world. Why? It's because God's in the program. Listen to the doctor. This doctor says these men and women have worked their minds. It's such an obsession for destructive drinking and drugging that only an act of providence can remove. This was from a medical consultant saying, God is the only person who can help these people. And for like in a short while, 1933, 34, I think the first book came out in 35, I'm not going to go into all that, but I'm just talking short a while, millions and millions and millions of people in recovery through the 12 steps, and they're all scripture. And they're broke down so simple people like me who can understand them. You know, I love the 12 steps, well, I really do. I'm passionate about them.
Why then did you decide to do psychotherapy?
My brother went in to become a psychotherapist first. He led the way, the brother. And I says, what is that about? And he says, so everywhere we went to try to help people in addiction, they all asked for qualifications. No qualifications, you couldn't get in. So he went to get qualifications. I signed up to go on, and we done 5 years, and then we done another couple of years in an addiction studies as well. So it was able to, when you're qualified and insured, you could open up doors and you could get people in because you're now a professional. But listen, everything I learned in them 5 years it's not what I use. I used to do 12 steps. That's God's honest truth. There's some good stuff there, but back to the 12 steps. There's the proofs in many people getting well. Go ahead.
My daughter, very ill, and she said she got a bus there, got back, and someone very drunk and surgery and all that, and for all, some of them were going to have to talk about being quite arrogant towards them. And she said she just got annoyed and she said, well, you must remember that he was somebody's baby, and he was a wee baby one day, and if it was a wee baby, it was crying, and that she took it a different day. So we should pray for him and be nice to him.
Sure, absolutely agree, 100%. I do. And that's not easy, by the way, because alcoholics and drug addicts are so unpredictable. So people can be frightened to stay away, and that's understandable too. But I found with it when I was doing, see, they call my organisation Heal the Hurt, because I believe when you heal the hurt, you get sober. And what is sobriety? As I said before, it's not about me anymore. All my drinking and drugging my whole life is about me. Sobriety is about all my family and my loved ones, not about me. It's about adding to their lives every single day. And I love doing it. It's a joy, a real joy. I mean, a joy I never had before that drinking, drugs and that mad lifestyle could never give me. And I have 5 beautiful grandchildren, Harley and Harper and Dahi and Brody and Hallie, and they're my life. And me and my wife love spoiling them. So that's what grand is for. And I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Before you finish it, sorry, go ahead.
How important is faith in your life when you do what you pray?
Every day in life. Try to get to Holy Mass every day. Adoration, very important for me. And never, if I'm going teaching around north or south of Ireland, it's always prep. Confessions, Holy Mass. And I don't know who's coming in the room and what people's carrying, so I have holy water and holy salt on all their seats before they come. I have first class holy relics with me everywhere I come, because it's only the Lord can get into that brokenness and stuff. And it's a really good question, because I always say, Holy Spirit, would you please help me to get out of your way? You're the teacher, you're the comforter. You know where people are broken. I genuinely, out of true humility, have no idea. You lead me. And it's Christ the healer. We don't need any more than that. But it's an amazing way of life. And the sad thing about it, out of every 100, the statistics is bad. The last time I checked them out, only 10 make it. The other 90 live a quiet life of desperation or death. Think about that. A quiet life of desperation or death. Because they haven't got the ability or the tools, or people haven't shown them how to develop a relationship with themselves. That's the key. That's what our Lord wants. Relationship, relationship, relationship. Our Blessed Mother is bringing us out here as an invitation. What for? To get to know our Son that wee bit better. Amazing, isn't it? Life changing. Changed my life anyway. So just finish with one more, and then we're going to get Kevin to play.
How do you know when you cross the line between enabling and being kind to a person?
Great question. A difficult one to answer. Enabling. See, a lot of the questions we people coming to me, they're heartbroken about their children or their mother and father drinking, and how bad it is, and saying, what if I've tried to bring Liam, I've done the rosaries, I've went to Mass, I'm going to priests all the time and stuff, and it's not working. And the next answer that I give them, they don't like it. Put them out. Oh, it sounds harsh, Liam thing. enabling a warm house, drink, drug and community abuse, and no, definitely not. Self-worth and self-esteem, it's not happening anymore. You want to have that behaviour, you go and do it somewhere else. Do you know that's why I get sober? My wife and children had, my first wife and children had enough and got up and left, and there was no manipulation in the world that they were ever coming back. My mother, father and brothers disowned me. Now I'm had a look at myself. How did I land, sit on the streets drinking wine? How? Because there are no depth to addiction. I was asked a question today about addiction. When you're thinking of addiction, you're listening to the father of lies and every demonic entity out there to destroy your life and your family's life. It wanders through the world and prowling for people who's hurt. Well, let's go into a family with children who've grown up in addiction, or one-parent families. Easy work for them to come in and destroy a family. So dependency, all must be in God. Sorry for that answer, but listen, I'm doing it 30 years, and the results of putting people out, like getting their sons and daughters, been so difficult, but been so fruitful as well, that they do get sober and clean, and they come home a different person. Step 3 says they need to be reborn. What does that mean? When I was drinking and drugging, that person has to die and reborn brand new in step 3.
It's just very fresh in my mind because my neighbour, who has an alcohol addiction, and she came to the door and asked for a lift into town. When she came to the door to visit, she was obviously drunk. She asked for a lift into town, and I didn't know what to do. You know, I brought her into town, and she showed me the bottle of cider on the way home she had bought, and then she had called when I got home. She probably had a bottle of whiskey in her pocket.
See, there's the difference between...
She was been told to deny.
I'm told to listen to, see that denial, D-E-N-I-A-L, it didn't even know I am lying. You got to understand, they don't know they're lying. I didn't know I was lying. It's part of the illness. But again, if I met...
No, what would you do in that case? Would you tell her, go away, I'm not bringing you into town?
100%, and it would take me nearly a second to get over it.
People like that, they catch their spirit animals.
Yeah, no, the other thing.
Like, absolutely, right?
I know.
Absolutely. It's a tough one, but it is enabling. It is
It's
enabling.
very, very tough. I'm also a psychotherapist. I lost my son to addiction recently.
Yeah,
And that was a very good question, that really asked.
yeah,
But I carry a lot of guilt because I stopped being evil,
yeah,
and because of the mother and through my work,
yeah.
I think I can see my son.
Right.
And I feel guilty because I had to stop being evil.
Yeah.
You do carry that shame and guilt.
Same as yourself, and thank you for sharing that. It took a lot of courage to share that in a room full of people. I'm sorry you lost your son to addiction, I really am. And the worst thing you can ever say to anybody, I don't know how you feel when you have never lost anyone. That's a bad thing to say to anybody. But again, I turned my family away and they died through addiction. But it was, with my brother, it was either do that or for me to relapse again and go back. I can't have that illness within my home, a holy home, regardless. It just doesn't work. But so my sponsor told me, Liam, you've got conditions on your mother and your brothers to stop drinking and behave in a certain manner, and then you'll love them. You want to get rid of that nonsense. You need to learn unconditional love. You learn to love your brother who's lying up the streets, getting beaten all the time because he's an alcoholic and stuff. And love my mother, where I found her in mental institutions and stuff. Love them where they're at in life. And I learned to do that. And you would know your own experience. Nothing good can come from guilt. Nothing good can come from guilt.
I think it's important.
And see the thing, what you're saying, in all my talks, I talk about how strong women are, light years ahead of men. light years ahead of me. You know, I had just when you were talking about that and sharing that, just before I left, me and the wife were really friendly with one of the boys I had in treatment and loved them. And he got sober and was really smart and intelligent. He learned fluent Chinese in no time at all. He's amazing, amazing. But he was offering, somebody knocked the door and they tried drugs and 10 minutes later he's dead. But then his brother took his own life straight after it. And like you were talking about, when my wife and I were at the funeral, I seen their mother and I seen what a reflection of my own mother who buried her 2 sons, just like you were talking about. I have no idea what it's like for you. I know it's like to bury 2 brothers and my mother. Just my heart goes out to you. But the things that you did were the right things to do. Because where do you believe he is now? Where's our faith? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
I have actually offered to go to work with our sister conceiving, so I called a few men on a voluntary basis to help people with addictions.
Good on
its
you.
own terms.
Good on you. And Our Lady took you out here for some kind of type of healing, which is amazing. It's amazing. And thank you for sharing. I'm going to hand the ring over to Father Leon. He wants to talk for another hour, he says.